Hey team, welcome to You Are Not Alone, the Work Edition. So, what we're hoping here with this is to give you a monthly conversation of a lot of the topics that you're going to experience in your work and sometimes even in your personal life. Why we've said that this is You Are Not Alone is because so much of what we can do in the leadership space, the team space, we have those moments of like, am I going crazy? Is this just am I the only one experiencing this? And this is the opportunity to spend 30 minutes with us each month over new topics and just find out how not alone you are. And providing that is myself. My name's Joshua Morlock. You will be spending the time with me as I dig into this with Emily. Looking back at my experiences, I have worked over 10 plus years in the HR field and 15 plus years in the leadership space, navigating all kinds of different environments. And I am excited to bring an experience that is tailored and nuanced to these conversations and the lived experiences that I have.
I'm his co-host, Emily Walton, and I'm very excited to be diving into this. I have 10 years of experience in recruitment marketing and HR tech, and I'm a certified executive leadership coach, and I'm really passionate about leadership. And Joshua and I just sat down and started having coffee chats, and we realized that these conversations were so valuable to unpack that we wanted to bring that to a wider audience, and we're excited to do that. Psychological safety is our topic for
Yes.
today.
Yes.
And where do we want to kick that off? Where do we want to start talking about that?
So the title of this is Real World Psychological Safety. There is an assumption that when we say real world psychological safety, that there is somehow two versions of psychological safety. And that's not true. There's only one version of psychological safety. So be it like our professional lives are the real world. Our personal lives are the real world. One of the most toxic things, in my opinion, I'm about to shake the apple cart, that a person can say is, when I come to work, I got to leave it at the door.
Uh-huh.
That is a dangerous phrase. All right. What I am not doing is inviting that everyone uses their workspace as also their occupational therapy, right? Like that's not that's not what it's for. But what it does mean is if you as a work culture deny what is happening outside your four walls, you're never going to be able to reach your team, your personnel in a way that is going to be truly effective, right?
Yeah, and that flies directly in the face of psychological safety, right? Like psychological safety is being able to show up, being able to bring yourself, being able to ask questions, challenge things without the fear of backlash or punishment. But if I'm told to check my baggage at the door, if you will, and I love what you were saying earlier, there's definitely a delineation of that doesn't mean come and use the workspace as your unloading ground. There's still a level of being able to moderate yourself and manage your emotions. But how in the world as a leader am I supposed to build really true, meaningful relationships where I can support and help my people if I don't care about their lives? I just care
Absolutely.
about their output.
The question that is often asked to expand psychological safety in the workplace, right? The ones that we always like when we're doing our workshops and we're listening, they go, you know what, the best way to help your team is ask them how they're doing, right? Just kind of like how you hinted at or how you spoke up. What is also going to be true to that is I think people ask the question, how can I support you? And there's a very load bearing asterisk at the end of the question mark. And it's like, how can I support you as long as what you're struggling with is in these defined perimeters?
As long as I'm
Right?
comfortable with what you bring
Yes.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. So please, so before you answer the question, I have a list of topics here that I need you to not bring up that you're struggling with. And if the thing that you're struggling with is not on this list, I would love to be able to support you. Right. And so that's not safety, right? You walk into a space and it says no firearms allowed on the premises except, that that's not a safe physical space. You're allowing everything into the door. And so when you ask that question, I think a leader, we talk about leadership a lot. It's a lot of our focus is, in our careers is if you're about to ask that question, you've got to be ready for whatever response is on the other side of that. right? Otherwise, the question's performative.
Right, and I think that also means, like, you have to know what you're willing to show up for,
Mhm.
and if you're equipped to support it, or if not, can you get them the resources or connections needed to support them? Because
Mhm.
not every leader is equipped. If someone says, "I'm really struggling, my spouse was diagnosed with
Mhm.
cancer," whew,
Right.
that's like, I'm not equipped to help you with that. Maybe you need something that would come from an EAP program, like,
Mhm.
who can I connect you with to help you out? And it's funny you say that because I also think I just did a workshop on like communication and we talked about
Mhm.
different levels of listening. And I was talking about like being there and really present in the conversation. And I think that's so important to foster psychological safety because if you're telling me things and there's a lot of weight to them and there's a lot of like impact to them, but I'm not really listening or I'm selectively listening and filtering out things I don't want to hear, that's also going to degrade psychological
Mhm.
safety. If I become vulnerable, bare my heart, bare my challenges to you, you say you're there for me, and then you show through your actions that you're not, how can I trust you?
Right. You have two responsibilities, I think, when you ask that question, two main responsibilities. Is you are either the person that can provide support or you're the liaison to the support. And to your point, the only way that you can be good at either one of those is by that active listening and being present, right? I think sometimes a leader can get into the habit of listening to respond.
Mhm. Always
So
have
you
the answers.
Yeah, and, like, the answer does having the best answer doesn't make you a great leader, right? They're not like, the chart doesn't, like, rise at the same, like, increase, like, you have great answers, so you must be a great leader. I mean, that's not always true, you know?
No.
So, like I said, are you listening to respond, or are you listening to go, "Okay, I'm gonna take what I can to support and take what I can to provide support that's not me." At the end of the day, they still trusted me, and I was able to point them in the right direction.
I think that's really interesting when you were saying that. What occurred to me was when you want to have the right answer, it feels like there's a focus on yourself.
Mhm.
I have to show up this way. I have to keep this like facade of leadership versus shining that focus on the other person of like, what do they need right now? What can I bring for them or help them with? Because that's really like helpful leadership. It's not just how do I show up? What do I look like? It's what do you need? And am I adaptive enough to shift given what the situation requires to provide it?
And adaptivity comes with experience. Like, when you and I talk, and like I'm leaders and team members and people just all around listen to this, I don't want there to be an assumption of like, and like they're talking about skills that I don't have, you know? That is okay if you're not in a place where you have the experience to be able to navigate that fully, right? It is okay to this is again talking about psychological safety from a leader standpoint. It is okay to get it wrong. Like, it is okay to learn from this, right? It is okay to ask that question, miss the mark, still be able to go, okay, you know what? Didn't handle it 100%. Let's still try to find you the help that I need. I want to circle back around and apologize and make sure, hey, you know what? I don't know if I handled that perfectly, but it means a lot that you trusted me with it. So I hope that you'll trust me with it again so that I can show up better for you next time. Right. There's that personal safety of going, it's okay to fail, you know?
Absolutely. And I love that you said earlier it's a skill because
Mhm.
there's like this, everyone has the debate. Well, is leadership, are you born with it or do you develop it? No one is born a leader. You develop it. And the people that you will think about when you think, oh, who's like a great leader in my mind, you're seeing them at like the pinnacle of their abilities. You didn't see all the struggles that they went through, but
Right.
exactly those struggles, those missteps, those mistakes were what they reflected on, what they learned from, and essentially talking about psychological safety, they gave themselves the grace to fail and learn and grow and get better at it. I think back to like when I was first a leader, I would just straight up avoid difficult conversations.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't
Like, the first year that I was a leader, I don't know if I ever had a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Like it, and it came to me like it came to a point where I was trying to maybe be best friends, or I was trying to like I can win productivity by being super like pleasant and never saying the hard thing. And it actually was having the reverse effect. Like I said, by not having the hard conversations, I was actually creating a very unsafe environment.
Yeah. And, I think in those situations, I can't speak for your motivation, but for me, I had transitioned from being a peer to being a
Mhm.
leader of former peers and wanting everyone to like me and
Right.
trying to make everyone happy. And I think that feeds into psychological safety as well and the environment that you're operating in and creating.
I mean, it comes down to, do you want to be liked? Do you want to be respected? Spoilers, you can actually have both. And it's also, do I want to make sure that the team has a productive outcome, right? And a sustainable productive outcome. Like when I think of psychological safety at its core, it is to have a sustained positive outcome, right? Because I can get a positive result very quickly from a team, right? That positive result, if it's not sustainable, is not actually the result we're looking for, right? Because now I've created an environment where, yes, okay, the demand is high. Like, I have to make sure I get it 100% right, or there's going to be a serious consequence. There's like, not that there shouldn't be accountability, but like the accountability should match the concern, right?
Mhm.
So when you're doing that and you're striking down on that demand and you're trying to get those immediate results, you realize, well, okay, one, like, how badly did I just burn them out, right? How badly did I burn a lot of bridges that I'm going to have to get back across when I need something else in the future, right? Like, what impact have I put on them from even like a learning standpoint, right? So I criticized the output, I criticized the outcome, but I didn't in any way provide any skills to make them better the next time around. So now when this happens again, they're scared to speak up. And I'm going to run into, again, man, maybe I'm not getting the positive outcome that I thought I was going to have based on the last results. And it's because there's been a lot of collateral damage along the way.
I love what you were saying there because the number of times I have spoken with leaders where they say, I don't understand. My team's not innovating. My team won't test anything. They won't try anything. They won't, I want them to run fast and fail and make progress. And then I observe that when somebody makes a mistake, it's met with this, like, how could you, like it's a personal failing, a personal flaw, and those 2 cannot coexist. You can't have psychological safety and then be frustrated and place blame and not respect that someone tried and failed and can use it as a learning experience. So that collateral damage, like you said, sometimes we don't even realize that we're creating it along the way until we reach a point where we can look back and say, wait, why aren't they doing this? Or why aren't they doing this anymore?
Right. You kind of look back and there's almost like a trail of bodies, right? You're just like, oh man, like, okay, so I've built this empire, but I've built this empire on a lot of broken people, right? A lot of damaged people. And I don't think the majority of leaders go into this going, I want to hurt people to get a positive result.
That'll be a different podcast episode on narcissistic leadership.
That's right. And listen, stay tuned, everybody. That'll be a thick one. But I don't think most people get into it for that negative result. There are some. I amend, and we know them well. But we want to do well. And we don't have the skills, like I said, to drive them forward, right? Or we don't always have the skills to pull them forward, right? That push versus pull, right? So
Mhm.
like, are you coaching them up or are you like forcing them through, right? So, I think because of that, you look back, you see that collateral, and two things: a good leader will look back and see collateral, or a leader that has the potential to be good and great will look back at the collateral and go, I can learn from this. I might not be able to fix this, but I can prevent it from happening in the future. And then a bad leader can look back at the collateral damage and go, but look what we accomplished.
What gets measured gets managed,
Hmm.
and we're measuring profit.
Right.
We're measuring loss. A P&L,
Yep.
We are measuring all of those things, but we're not measuring what are the actions, what are the culture building things that actually make this a great place to work, make it a high performing team. We don't measure, did Joshua come over and talk to Emily because she was having a bad day? And that helped her realize that this is a great place to work.
The way that I've always talked about this is, and I think I've used this expression with you before, green people create green metrics. Like, you won't be able to drive the business forward if everyone in your organization is redlining. Like, that's not continuity. Like, you're going to be in trouble. So it's, if you really want to drive and to push and to be successful, yes, you're going to have that groundswell up, because you've got one person can make a great decision, but if you, and you can get, you're either going to get buy-in or you're going to get forced momentum, right? Again, that forced momentum, like you've pushed them to do that. That's great short term. Get that buy-in, it's long term. So if it doesn't start from the ground up and work its way up, then I think you're always going to struggle. Like I said, it's 100 versus 1 when you think about your workforce.
Well, and I also think you need to have the buy-in at every level. Like if you're pushing these programs and supporting these things, and you have certain leaders saying psychological safety, that's what I'm invested in, this is how we do it. But then let's say skip level, someone on your team goes and works with someone else and they don't experience psychological safety, you're going to have conflict, and it's not, it's kind of like, what lip service am I being fed here?
I think safety works downstream, productivity works upstream.
Mm.
Like, and you've got to, if the safety is flowing down correctly, the productivity is going to flow upwards correctly, right? Like, they're going to feed into one another.
I haven't thought about
And
it like that, but yeah, I like that.
but it comes back to that phrase, and you said it before we started recording. Does HR protect the company or does it protect the people? Right. And I think that expression encapsulates this part of the conversation because, and again, it comes back to what I just said. Green people create green metrics. You best protect the company by protecting its people, right? You don't want the company to have a discrimination lawsuit, then make sure that your team members are prepared to handle those moments when they come up and to lead through them and to work through them the right way. Sexual harassment, did you train them? Did you give them the understandings to be able to do that? Like, to work through and navigate that? If you haven't, then that's on the organization. So the idea that you can both protect the company and protect the people at the same time, these do not have to be mutually exclusive. And this is one of the things, like, find me the highest mountaintop and let me scream at the top of my lungs about it. Like, we can have both. Two things can be true at the same time. And when you have someone that comes into your, like, the leader comes to that person and goes, "Hey, with the scenario we talked about, the team member goes to their leader and is like, "Hey, this is how I need help with this." And then the leader goes, "Okay, do you want to go to HR? Is this something you feel comfortable going to HR to?" And that team member goes, "HR is just here for the company." A person who says that has been hurt. Like, that phrase does not come out of the blue. You are not born as a child with the only knowledge that HR only protects the company, right? So because of that, that means it is a learned expression. Something has happened to make you say that and feel that way, right? Either it has been a past HR, or God forbid, it is the HR that they're inside of right now and the team that supports them. But if that is said, that has got to be a massive red flag, right? It doesn't mean that it's necessarily true, quote unquote. It doesn't mean that maybe they are fully understanding the big picture, right? But what it does mean as an HR team, if somebody says that, we need to at least self-reflect. We need to at least identify why that feeling exists, and then let's see what we can do to try to work through some of that and regain some of that trust, right? The problem is with trust, it'll take you a second to lose it and a year to gain it back. So you have to be very, very careful.
Mic drop moment. I think that is something that's like a different perspective, because a lot of times people view like the psychological safety around, can I go to HR? If I were a leader and someone comes to me and they're letting me know something that, you know, yeah, maybe HR should be involved in this. And I'm going to ask them, do you just need me to listen? Do you need me to help like ideate, solve, support? or do we need to take this to HR? And I get that response of HR is not here for me. They're here to protect the company. I think there's a huge opportunity for more organizations to show that they can be there for their people because their people are the company.
No, 100%. When you start viewing it as us versus them, you've already lost. That's a question that I have, trying to think through it. Is that even a mindset that you can even come back from?
I think not without either change in people or sustained change in action, where you put your money where your mouth is and your actions align with that. Yeah. So I'm thinking about how is psychological safety influenced either by the experiences we're having outside of work that we maybe bring with us and apply to work, or separate half of that question, how is it shaped in the environment of work and it plays out?
One of the things that I've talked about before is and the toxic mindset of leave everything at the door, right? You have to like when you walk into this building, man, you got to leave home at the door, right? How possible is that, really? Because I know, like let's say I was going through a divorce, right? I am not stopping having a divorce just because I'm punched in on a time clock, right? That's not going to go away. What I think best influences that is, are you in an environment that can support a hurting person? And are you willing to have the best sign that something is happening to somebody is a productivity change. And as a lot of leaders, and I'm going to put this in a manufacturing space really quick, because I think manufacturing is the easiest space to calibrate results with, right? You either see it being produced on time or you don't see it being produced on time. There the success fail is very easy to identify. Right? You start seeing that someone who has been very consistent suddenly starts to go down in their consistency, right? Suddenly you start seeing gaps in consistency. There is only one question that should be asked, and if you ask any other question around outside of this one, I think you've missed the mark as a leader. I apologize for my broad brush, but I think you've missed the mark. And that question should be, is there something going on that I can help you with inside of work, or is there some kind of assistance that I can offer? Because I'm not going to pry, I'm not going to ask you what's wrong, but I noticed that these last couple of days, these last couple of weeks, I'm just noticing that you're coming at work a little bit differently. You don't say they're being less productive. You don't say that they're not as good as at their job as they were 2 weeks ago, right? Just, hey, I noticed that something's different in your work. Is there some way that I can support you? Right? Because it is very hard to bridge that to your question. It is very hard to leave your home and come to work because you're leaving one unsafe space to come to another unsafe space. Man, when you've doubled your unsafe, you're not even just worried about psychological safety at that point. You're talking about a level of mental health that can be incapacitating for someone, right? And I think the responsibility of a workforce is to always try to make sure that at least your four walls are psychologically safe, that your four walls have this level of being able to provide support. Because Joshua can't control the four walls of someone that works for him. So if I don't make my place safe and their place is unsafe, it's guaranteed to be a failure. But if I can at least make my four walls safe, I can at least influence in some small way to protect their mental safety, right? And their mental health. You will never also be able to clock out and not take your work home with you, right? So again, I think a lot of helping to make sure that you can influence a high level of psychological safety is, am I keeping the parameters of work the way that I should? And what I mean by that is, like, software developers deal with crunch. Manufacturing people deal with overtime. Was this planned overtime? Was this forced overtime? Are you or even thinking about, there were many times in other jobs I was working 50 to 60-hour weeks. I was not seeing my family. And even though when I come home from work and, my significant other goes, how was work today? And I go, it was really good. I can say it was really good. The problem is I just took 20 extra hours out of my family time. So work might be great, but I've now lost time with my family that I'll never get back. And I think there should be, to protect that home as well, There needs to be these parameters and boundaries on I'm only going to work this much. And I think the company's responsibility is to say, I am going to make sure that the parameters in this work are understood.
How, like on a team, for example, if we're trying to make work this good, how do we foster psychological safety? Not even within the whole organization, just within the parameters of our team.
It starts with follow through. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, right? That is where trust is built. Trust is built in the small moments. This is actually a theme that's come up very often for me recently. And that is you win the big moments through the small moments. And if I show up for my team continually as a leader in the small moments, there's going to be a big moment arrive. And it'll be a hinge point for us, for the team. And it is going to be proven by was I able to trust Joshua with the small things? Like every time I needed him or asked him for a question or needed that quick one on one with him, he was never present. He was never there. He would say he would do something, he never followed up, right? You're not going to win the war on the big moments, right? You're not going to keep your team on the big ones. You're going to keep them on the small ones. So, like I said, that follow through, like I said, when you check in, is it active listening, right? Are you not just listening to respond? The other way you build psychological safety, even with your small team, is how do I communicate? So the way you communicate and invite curiosity and invite follow-up questions, that is so important, right?
I want to jump in there too because that brings in there's a skill we're taught in the coaching space of asking open-ended questions. And just like you were saying, if I was like, why can't you do this? You're like, can you not do this very basic task? That's going to make you feel more defensive and it's going to like narrow the scope of the conversation. And you might get like a yes or no or simple answer, but it's not really like building a relationship. But in asking open ended questions that are more inviting and collaborative and move the conversation forward, like if someone brings you something and they say, hey, how do you want this done? You can say, well, walk me through. What have you done so far? What has your thought process been so far? And you're inviting them to share without any judgment on your end, just hear them out. And then you can even take it further and turn this into a learning experience for them where it's safe for them to ask you questions, but you can also brainstorm and collaborate where you go, okay, well, how might we achieve this? Or how might we do that? And you're just asking these questions that are usually what or how questions that make it safe for you two to engage together in ideation, solutions, exploration, etc. So this is bringing to mind for me too. It's one thing when you're working within your team. If you're the leader over your team, there's a certain level of power dynamics and influence there that can sometimes make things happen even if the approach you're taking maybe is like a short-term focused approach. But then you also have this need. I can't think of any like job description that I've ever seen in my life where they didn't say ability to like collaborate with,
Right.
other teams. So also what was coming to mind when you were saying that was like those situations where you have a meeting with different people and people are shooting out ideas and there's almost like maybe let's say the collective of the room has like 80% psychological safety, but there's that one person who's just the no person or that won't work because person. And that can be really detrimental to psychological safety, especially if the team is a cross function team. And so that was bringing up some other ideas about when you're in situations like that. If your proclivity is to say no or that won't work, my challenge would be to find what could work or what you could latch onto. Like, what's the 10% of that idea that you go, what I like about that is, or where I could see that applied, or I see the value in that. The challenge is going to be this. How might we, another open ended question, how might we overcome that? What ideas do you have? Because it changes it from you being no, or your ideas are always bad, or you don't know as much as me, to, well, I do see a roadblock, and I know that we'll hit this roadblock if we go down that road. But can you help me build a bridge over the roadblock?
I think when you have a meeting, when you've invited everyone to a meeting, you've invited no guy, right? You've invited no person to the meeting, and so you know that they're coming. They're probably in that mindset. So we say, I don't know who coined this phrase, but I love it. Hurt people,
Amen.
right? Like it's, well, hey, we know. And that person that is bringing what is an 80% collaborative space, they're bringing that negativity into it. Again, the first word they didn't learn was no, right? So it's a learned behavior. There is a lot of neuron wiring that has brought them to the place where they're just like, can't do it. No, absolutely not. Roadblocks galore. This plane won't take off, right? You're exactly right to continue to ask those open-ended questions. The person that is detrimental to the psychological safety, they also deserve psychological safety. They're not an exclusionary force to the culture that you're trying to build.
Joshua, that is so big because I feel like when people are pushing for psychological safety and then they come up against this no person, it's almost like, let me be callous to them
Mhm.
and block them and become frustrated at them. But exactly to your point, there is a reason driving their behavior. You may never know what it is, but just putting up a wall and forcing them out is never going to change it.
100%. And I will never be paid enough to also be their therapist, but I am paid well to be a great leader. And no matter what is going on that's causing that, does not give me the excuse to not show up for them the right way. That does not give me permission to still not care for them. You're not, and again, we talked about collateral damage, listening to you and thinking about that model. Let's also not forget about the other 80% in that room. They are watching how you respond to the no person. And if you treat the no person a certain way, they become afraid of ever saying no. Suddenly,
Mhm.
when they view an obstacle, they're not wanting to speak up because they saw the way you interacted with that person and they don't want to become a target now. They don't want to lose that relationship. They don't want you to become callous to them. So if
That's
you're not representing yourself right, that 80% that is collaborative, suddenly you start to lose their trust too.
That's huge because it's like we're talking about psychological safety and how do you build it, but if you kind of weaponize acceptance, then you're going to get groupthink and people are all going to start acting a certain way, and that's not psychological safety.
People innovate the best when they feel safe. Let me make sure that for myself, for anybody listening, just to make sure I'm naming it out loud. Safety does not mean comfortability. These can be two wide valleys, right? I can be very uncomfortable and still be very safe. Or I know that I am doing something that is going to stretch me. I'm doing something that I've not done before. I'm doing something that is going to teach me new skills. Again, everything that I am good at was something I had never done before. So, and I need to make sure that like I am building that environment as a leader where it is okay to, we talked about this, it's okay to fail, but like it's also okay to go, I'm learning this skill. This is something new for me and I can be uncomfortable in this because I know if I get it wrong, because I'm bound to, there's something there to catch me and to make sure that I can grow from it and that it's not catastrophic.
When you said that, like, I can be uncomfortable in a situation and still be safe, to me, that is the essence of psychological
Mhm.
safety
A hundred
because
percent.
I can be uncomfortable that maybe I'm going to be the dissenting voice and speak up and share a concern, but I know that it's not going to cost me my belonging, my credibility, how I am accepted in this space. And I think that's huge because the other thing is like a lot of people want to avoid conflict because conflict can blow up in our faces or maybe isn't managed very well. But in a psychologically safe environment, conflict, even though it has a negative connotation, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Conflict can be a really good thing because if we're working together on a project, you see it differently than I see it. We have to put our heads together and actually figure out how are we going to make this work. We can come up with something even better than if we just did one or the other of our solutions. And if we're working in a psychologically safe space, that's where you're going to have like the best performance out of teams
Mhm.
because people can ideate, people can throw things at the wall, crazy, off the wall things. I remember one time I was having a meeting and there were people all around the table, and some of the ideas that were being thrown out were kind of like zany, But I was really, really, and I was the leader in that situation. So I was really intentionally trying to be like, okay, that's an option. Let's put it on the list. Let's put it on the list without shooting anything down because there was a lot of positive momentum coming out of the group because they felt comfortable to just throw things out there. And I really think that, we have this focus on like performance and perfection and execution and hitting our revenue metrics, but like with how competitive the world is today with AI, with how quickly things change, and we're having to constantly innovate, you need a psychologically safe environment to do that effectively. And psychological safety is going to eat like perfection and metrics for breakfast every day.
Percent. You're safe. You cannot be perfect in a safe space.
No, it's like the antithesis. Like, and
A hundred.
striving for perfection as a recovering perfectionist it's impossible. It's an impossible goal.
Two things come to my mind and they tie in together. Conflict is good. And I've always worded that conflict as little c conflict,
Mhm.
right? You have big C conflict and it's destructive, right? But healthy is little c conflict, where you can have those moments of disagreement, where you can have those moments where this isn't like, you know what, we're going to agree to disagree, but we're also going to agree that there's a great solution somewhere in here and let's find it together, right? I feel my teams are at their least safe when everyone agrees with me. If I shoot something out there and I go, "Hey guys, let's listen to this," and then everybody on my team, it's just like, "Joshua, that's so good, man. Like that's really good, bud. Like let's just go ahead and use that one." Like if everyone agrees with my idea, I know that we're in trouble.
Because then you're either that good or it's not a safe space for them to.
It's not a safe space. Either I've peaked and I need to move on, right? I have hit the culmination of my career and it's just time for me to retire. Or more likely, like what you said, it's not a safe space. There's got to be, and I know my ideas, Emily, they're not all incredible. There is a lot of room for workshop. So if everyone agrees, that's a red flag. And I think it should be a red flag for a leader, right? Or if they say something and everyone's less like, Joshua, that's incredible. My follow up question should be, are you sure? Like, let's think about it holistically. Is there not some gaps in it we can identify? Like, please speak up, you know? Because then if I have an airtight idea, we're all in trouble.
You just mentioned potentially an environment like that you created for yourself where you're
Mhm.
not able to like be in a psychologically safe space. And that was really interesting to me because I think we've talked a lot about what's going on externally in the real world, but our internal narratives are also in the real world. And I think
100%.
we don't do a lot of work, at least in the like US culture. We don't tend to focus too much on like what's my internal narrative telling me. And there's a phrase that's something like, our thoughts form our beliefs and our beliefs form our actions. So if our thoughts are very negative about ourselves, or we're very sensitive because we're very hard on ourselves internally, you may also be creating an unsafe environment for yourself to receive feedback, where any feedback is judgment and criticism, even if it's meant constructively. And I'm speaking from first person experience because that's something, again, perfectionism. I was like, any feedback, if I wasn't hitting the mark, I was failing. And that's
100%.
not psychologically safe on an internal level to grow and develop and give yourself the grace and opportunity to do so.
Giving yourself grace is massive. One of the you'll hear phrases in your life that unlock things for you. One of the phrases that I had a leader tell me once is the story I am telling myself dot dot dot. And that was profound for me because I realized that, and if I'm being honest, Emily, I know we're talking a lot about like external psychological safety, and we've kind of taken now into a pivot of internal. When I think about the most unsafe environments I've been in, there has been some level of accountability on me where I have created or extrapolated a lot of that lack of safety for me. And it is because of that internal narrative that you talked about, where I have brought a lot of past trauma and that baggage we called it at the door, like I've brought it in with me and I don't want to let it go. And I refuse to, like, maybe I get good feedback and I go, what's their motivation? Maybe I am very hard on myself. Again, that perfectionist mentality, and I hear some feedback and go, of course they're right. How could I have ever been successful? Have you met me? Like, and you start like framing this terrible picture of yourself where we talk a lot about looking in the mirror. We talk a lot about self reflection and introspection. If you hate the person that's in the mirror, that self reflection is just as dangerous as unsafe as anything else externally. So, like, there is so much work that has to be done on the self to really be able to provide a safe environment for yourself. Because I will tell you this, if you cannot provide a safe environment for yourself, you will struggle, if not find it impossible, to create a safe environment for those around you.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because I think thinking back on my own experiences earlier in my career, when I would say that my internal mental game was much harder on myself than it is today. And I would try to create a very healthy space for other people. And I thought I was because I was very good at, here's what I want it to look like externally when things were good. But when things weren't good, when things became stressful or challenging, or there were performance issues, or we went through COVID and there were stresses like that, I could no longer keep that negativity inside. And that frustration started to seep out. And honestly, it did not, nobody on my team warranted that. And if I was in a better mental space and I was in a better space to be kind and accepting of myself and where I was and the growth I needed to do and introspective of the growth I needed to do, I think I could have handled things very differently and had some of those conversations very differently, which would have preserved more psychological safety and trust on my team through very tumultuous periods.
Thank you for being vulnerable with that. And I will say that I agree, even with my own experience, that there has been a very linear path up to where my own personal healing journey has allowed me to lead better and more safely.
Yeah.
And that is something I really stress to leaders. I stress to everybody, not just leaders, but talking to leaders. I really stress to you and to all listening, you are going to find a very hard time creating safety when you've not allowed safety for yourself. And I urge that personal healing journey. And I said that the path was linear. Let's be very clear, healing journeys are non-linear. They go forwards, they go backwards, they go up, they go down. Sometimes they stop, sometimes they run. They're incredibly, you'll never be able to draw a straight line with one. But I have found that as I heal, my ability to be a great leader has also risen with it, right? In that journey. Because I do not want the criticism of myself. I would hate the feedback, Emily, to be given to me. I'd hate for you to be on my team and you go, Joshua, you are an incredible and safe leader when things are incredible and safe. Because there's something on the other side of that sentence I don't want to hear, right? I need to also be a great and incredible leader when things aren't safe, because that or when things aren't incredible and still provide that safety. Like I said, you learn a lot about the safety of your team when things aren't going correctly, because a good result can cover many wounds, right? Because we all have that high of a great accomplishment. What happens when that wears off?
Yeah. What are you left with?
Mhm.
There's something you said just a minute ago that sparked a thought that then quickly left my head.
See, you had a nonlinear healing thought. It just goes all over the place.
That's what it was that, you familiar with the Peter principle?
I'm not, but I'm excited to learn.
I think about it like the Peter Pan principle, even though that's
Mhm,
not what it's called because that helps me
mhm,
remember it. But it's
mhm.
essentially rising to your level of incompetence.
I love
Yeah. And what you were saying to me, like the biggest, most exponential periods of growth I have experienced for myself in my personal life and in my career have been when I am willing to do the work on myself.
Mhm.
There is, for me to show up and contribute to a psychologically safe environment, I have to show up as myself without all the armor and the gates and the walls in place to try and protect myself. There's a level of vulnerability that's required in that.
You say rise to the level of your own incompetence, and I love that saying. I may get it tattooed. But what I also really love what you just said was, how dare you ask anyone to be vulnerable when you can't be vulnerable yourself? Like, what an unfair ask to go, hey, I need you to be vulnerable in this moment and tell me what's going on. And you always walk into a scenario like you are about to do a chariot race. Like, you are top to bottom in full armor and nothing can get through. And you're just like, okay, everyone, go ahead and let's all be vulnerable. I will not be disclosing anything.
Yeah, and that's gonna be an inauthentic exchange, and that does not
Mhm.
foster psychological safety because if I'm asking you to be open with me and then you're met by a stone facade, like we know when we're being duped. On a
Mhm.
certain level, we know when it's not an equitable exchange or like it's not a collaborative relationship. So if we were having a real heart to heart about something, and then you're like, "What about you? What have your experiences been?" And I just brush it off. That's going to give you a signal that, okay, actually, I probably shouldn't divulge so much again in the future, or you're not really here in the trenches with me on this.
You said it best. A person will always be able to suss out, if you will, like when someone again is not being that, if they're not being what the moment says that they should be, right? They're not showing up to the moment the right way. And when I feel that, I automatically lose a little bit of trust because we had an agreement that we were both going to show up to this a certain way, and you didn't meet your side of it.
Even if it's an unspoken agreement, because I think that's a big thing is like there are certain expectations of if you're my boss, like, and you invite me to share something with you or unload with you, and then you don't follow up the second half of that with some level of support or care that may never have explicitly said, okay, Joshua, I'm just going to tell you what's going on and I really need X, Y, and Z from you. But if you don't show up at some semblance of that, then that's a signal to me too that, this contract is not being fulfilled.
Thank you so much for saying that because it does bring it back full circle to that psychological safety. If you put yourself in a scenario where you're very much out of your league, this is not your passion, this is not your desire and what you want to do, you're not going to be fully committed to it. And that is an unsafe way to lead. And again, when you are unsafe, you will create unsafe environments.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us together as we explored this topic. If you would like to connect with us, you can find our LinkedIn contact information in the podcast episode notes. We would love to hear from you. Let us know if there's something in particular that resonated with you from this episode, or if there are particular topics that you would like us to cover in the future. Finally, if you found this information valuable, please go ahead and give us a follow. And if you know anyone else who you think would benefit from this information, please share the link with them. Thank you again and take care.